The Subway Series returns tonight, this time at Citi Field. The Mets and Yankees will square off in round two. Joel Sherman, our baseball columnist, joins us right now. And Joel, when we look at these two teams, both of them right now, if the season would end today, would make the playoffs. As presently constituted, do you think both these teams are playoff teams, or does something need to happen in addition for one of these teams, probably particularly the Mets, in order for them to get to October?
Yeah, obviously the Yankees have a team like we expected that is probably a 90 to 95 win team, and quite frankly, I think the American League East is playing down a little. You know, Tampa Bay's defense has been really bad. Boston has really not gotten over last year's hiccups completely yet, but I still think they have a run in them. You know, Baltimore has confused the top. Toronto's gotten really hurt in their rotation, so it might not take much more than 91, 92, 93 in a division where you usually have to win in the mid-90s or higher to win. So I think that's one thing. The Mets, you know, the division also, you know, aside from the Nationals, I think obviously the Phillies have played well below where we expected, even with all the injuries they had. You know, the Marlins are as schizophrenic as their manager. They bounce up and down. And, you know, the Mets, despite having some real trouble spots on their roster, notably their bullpen, their bullpen isn't just bad. It's half a run worse than any other team in the sport right now, ERA-wise. And they just keep navigating around their problems, specifically because their starting pitching has been so good, and David Wright has played like an all-star. But I do think there's probably going to have to be some internal augmentation of that bullpen. You know, maybe Jenry Mejia or someone else coming up. And if they're in it in late July, Mark, I don't know how they don't throw you know, first of all, go for it to some degree,
right,
but also throw a bone to fans a little and say, we get it. You've been upset about how we've gone about business and played in recent years, and we're surprisingly legitimate contenders here. We're not going to give up our, you know, 4 to 5 best prospects, but we're going to take some guys and maybe add a bit, not a ton of money, but maybe we can essentially buy a player for the bullpen, someone just trying to get out of a contract, you know, a Brian Fuentes type of guy maybe. And I think they've got to try to do that. If you and I are having this conversation a month from now, 3-4 weeks into July, I think they've got to do that.
Joel, you talked about probably the biggest Met issue is the bullpen. One of the issues for the Yankees that you wrote about this week is Alex Rodriguez's surprising, almost staggering lack of doubles this season. What did you learn from your reporting on that, and what do you think you can attribute A-Rod's lack of doubles to?
Yeah, you know, it's one thing not to have a lot of doubles like Curtis Granderson, who has 9, and, you know, mix it with 20 homers before the All-Star break like Curtis Granderson's done. But, you know, Alex Rodriguez, who's the active leader in extra base hits, is sitting with 6 doubles, 11 homers. So there's 17 extra base hits here. I mean, he's on pace for, you know, he's got a low 400 slugging percentage. He doesn't look anything like the player. And I only bring up the doubles because, you know, if you remember Alex Rodriguez, it's not just that the ball goes over the fence, but he hits it so with such might during his prime, it goes over outfielders' heads, it hits the fence, it gets into the gap, and he hits doubles. And I think it's endemic to his general power problem that he's just not driving the ball with any consistent authority. He's become a guy, he's got a good eye, he's walked a lot this year, and he's, you know, hit enough singles to keep his batting average in the, you know, the 270, 275 area. But the Yankees are hitting him 3rd and 4th in the lineup at this point still, and I think it's going to have to be something they re-examine as they get closer to the break. If Alex, you know, the promises keep coming from him and, you know, Kevin Long, who's as big a true believer in Alex as there is, that there's a hot streak coming, and not just a short one, but something extended for a month and 2. And Mark, we know this, you know, with great players, historically, you don't like to completely shut off the possibilities. You know, I wrote plenty about Derek Jeter's struggles for a year from like June 2010 to June 2011, and then from July 2011 to the end of the season and through the first month this year, he was about as good a hitter as there was in the American League. So, you know, great players have the ability through ability, pride, work ethic, etc. to resuscitate, but this isn't just a small slump at this point. Alex Rodriguez is in a 5th or 6th straight year of having his OPS come down, and really there is a slugging issue here, and if the slugging issue continues, I don't think that, you know, A-Rod can continue to hold the position in the middle of the lineup just on emeritus.
That'd be fascinating, obviously, if A-Rod gets dropped. Last thing for you, Joel. You wrote an interesting column in today's post, which is you address the Hall of Fame candidacies of both CC Sabathia and Johan Santana. CC, by the way, on track to pitch Sunday night against R.A. Dickey. Santana will miss this series. Joel, both these guys obviously need to enhance their resumes before their Hall of Fame candidacies are going to be assessed. But what do you think about CC and Santana for the Hall of Fame?
Well, there's a lot of stuff. I hope people read the column that I try to put them in some historical perspective. And one of the things I found really fascinating is age and innings-wise, CC Sabathia is almost a complete mirror of Greg Maddux, who ended up winning 355 games in his career. Now, Sabathia, like Maddux, carries a heavy workload, and so you always worry about that. And you also always worry, about a guy his size and his ability to handle, the workload moving forward. But he's sitting with roughly about 180 to 185 wins. He doesn't turn 32 until next month. Those are numbers almost exactly like Maddux, even innings pitched. And so, if he gets to 300, it's going to be hard to deny him the Hall of Fame. And Santana's a guy who I think his candidacy will be a lot like a Pedro Martinez kind of candidacy, though without maybe the consistent dominance. You're going to have to look back and say that Santana isn't a guy, he's going to struggle to even get to 200 wins, 130s. He's going to have to be a guy you look at and say, well, there was about a 6-year period with the Twins where he was the best pitcher in baseball. He won 2 Cy Youngs. He finished in the top 5 3 other times. He was a driving force in getting the Twins to the playoffs 4 times in 5 years. And look, he's now got a shot at a second chapter that we wondered about. And again, like CC, you wonder how long will last. It's a shoulder injury. It's been spectacular what he's done. He's added something to his resume this year by breaking the Mets' no-hit streak. So maybe he does have another 4 or 5 years, maybe not at the elite level of the Twins, but at a high enough level where at the end of it, Mark, you sit there and go, wow, he's won 215 games. He won 2 Cy Youngs. He finished in the top Cy Young maybe now 5 or 6 or 7 times. And, again, I think part of this for both CC and Santana, Mark, is do they get their teams to the playoffs and do they do something while there? Because those really look great on a resume. All
right, well, both teams obviously are going to continue their playoff quest tonight at Citi Field. Round 2 of the Subway Series. Joel and I will be there all weekend long, so check back on nypost.com for all the coverage. You can follow Joel on Twitter at JoelSherman1. You can follow me at Hale Mark. And we'll have a lot more from you for both the Mets and Yankees, obviously, as the season goes on. For Joel, I'm Mark. Thanks for watching.